Hey friends, happy Passover, happy Pesach. Just wanted to share some information that God has given me on these feast days. I know a lot of Christians are talking about this right now, and I think that's awesome. The enemy does not want us to understand these feast days because they're so powerful and so prophetic. And I'm going to show you a little bit of what God has shown me, okay? And I'm going to start off right here on Passover. It's the first feast day of the seven, okay? And Passover always lands on the first month on the 14th day at midnight. Why do you ask? Is because that's the first full moon of the year. Okay. The second one is unleavened bread, right? The day after. Then the day after unleavened bread, we have feast of first fruit. Those three go one day after the other. Okay. But then we have 7 sevens after the first fruit. We go into Pentecost. So it's 49 days going into the 50th day. We have Pentecost, which Pentecost means 50. And then we get to the fifth feast day, which is Day of Trumpets, but also known as Yom Teruah, which is blowing of trumpets. But now they call it Rosh Hashanah, which means New Year, which isn't that because the New Year, according to biblical calendar, would be Passover. Okay, and so then we go into the Day of Atonement right after that, guys, and that is also in the fall. And then we hit the last one on the seventh month of the Jewish calendar on the 15th day, which also represents a full moon, guys. Okay, so we have 7 of these feast days. 4 of these feast days have already been completed. Jesus dies on Passover at 3 p.m. He's buried. He's the bread of life, right? You know that he's born in Bethany, right? You know that Bethany means a house of bread. So the bread of life who was born in the house of bread is now broken on this day, okay? Next, we have the Feast of First Fruit. This is when he rises at 6 a.m. Mary Magdalene comes up to him and grabs him because she's so happy to see him. But he tells her, Mary, do not cling on to me, for I have not ascended to the Father yet. Because the Father had to inspect him first because it was a Feast of First Fruit. Okay? So we see that those happen, right? Jesus tells him not to leave Jerusalem until Pentecost, basically. And on Pentecost, that's when they finally receive the Holy Spirit, and that basically changes the whole world from that point on, right? So that was very significant. It was part of why Jesus had to die in order for us to have the Holy Spirit dwell with us everywhere, because Jesus couldn't be with us everywhere on the earth while he was here at that time. So he had to have the Spirit come and represent him to all of us, right? Okay, so we see that these feast days are now all fulfilled, but we still have the fall feast days that have not been touched yet, right? So we're still waiting for the Lord to fulfill those feast days, okay? All right, but that's not what I wanted to talk about today. So what I want to talk about are 3 feast days in particular, and we want to start with the first one being Passover. Why Passover? Because if we read here in Genesis chapter 1, and this is day 2, it says, and God said, let there be light in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. Okay? So he wants the light, which is the sun and the moon, to be set for specific times for set appointments. God uses the word moed, which means set appointment there. And he's also going to use them just in a general way, just for us to have time and years of days. But he's also wants us to pay attention to something regarding the moon in regards to these feast days, because only 3 of them have something to do that's related to the moon, okay? Now, Passover being the first one lands on the full moon. Remember what he said, it's sacred times here, okay? So what makes the first feast day more sacred than any others? Well, without this feast day, we wouldn't have any other feast days, okay? Without Jesus dying on Passover, none of us would be able to be in the presence of the Lord, okay? And what does this full moon signify, right? Well, Jesus is the light, and the moon is full this night because it represents a completion of prophecy. What prophecies? We have so many prophecies that Jesus is fulfilling during this week. We got Isaiah 53, we got Zechariah 9:9, we got Daniel 9:25 to 26. We got so many other areas that we see in Psalms, in Proverbs, in Isaiah. We could go on and on with all the prophecies that Jesus fulfills during this week, right? And it's endless, okay? So, but what we want to do is focus on these three right now. So the full moon represents the fullness, the completion, right? And it's the first one on the new month, which also represents a new beginning. This month represents a new beginning. So Jesus comes, he dies on Passover on a full moon to represent the whole world into this prophecy. Anybody can have it. The moon is full, meaning anybody could take part in this now if you just choose to believe, okay? And then we go into the next 3 feast days up into Pentecost, and we don't see anything on there that has to do with the moon. But then when we get to the first fall feast day, we finally see something to do with the moon, and it's the Day of Trumpets. But this time, it's not a full moon. It's a new moon, okay? So the Day of Trumpets starts on the 7th month of the Jewish calendar. The 7 represents completion, and it's a new moon representing a new beginning, but it's not full. So this new beginning isn't for everybody. It's only for selected people, and it's a small amount because you could barely have a slither of light to determine this new month, right? So it's not a lot of people that are going to be filled or completed in this prophecy or this feast day, okay? So it represents a completion because it lands on the 7th day. It's not for everybody because it's not a full moon, but it is a new beginning, but because it's going to be a new beginning for a selected amount of people who are going to be raptured up at this time, okay? And then we get the Day of Atonement after that. And then the last feast day in the fall on the 7th month also is Tabernacles, and that's on the 15th day of the month, which is also on a full moon, okay? And so this is the last full moon for the feast days, okay? And this represents a completion of all the feast days. This is now Tabernacles, which means for us to dwell with God, right? We're now going to be able to dwell with God on earth for 1,000 years, the millennial reign. And so we see this in this full day, in this full moon, showing a completion of all the other feast days. But there it is, guys. We have 3 days or 3 feast days that are different from the others. The first one being a full moon, the last one being a full moon. The first one representing the beginning of the transition, the last one representing the end of the transition into the millennial reign. And then in the middle of it, we have the new moon, which represents the rapture for those who are going to be transitioning into this new beginning for this temporary time until we come back down and dwell here on the earth with everybody else on the start of Tabernacles. Okay, so I hope that this helps out, and I hope this will be a blessing to you guys. Go ahead and do research on this, and don't take my information as truth, but search it on your own. Ask God to reveal these mysteries to you, and I pray that you have a good Passover, and God bless.